I was invited to see the new movie Disclosure Day by Steven Spielberg on the world premiere by a Quebec media company called Le Verbe, a Catholic company. They invited me to be able to go and obviously to write a small article about it, and I decided to make a video about it as well. And so we're going to talk about this movie, which in some ways, my sense of it is that it is the last boomer propaganda movie. Obviously, there's going to be more, but it's a kind of final gesture, maybe of desperation of that generation, of the kind of post-World War II generation. And this is everything the movie is about, kind of crystallizes what we've called post-World War II symbolism in ways that are in places surprising, in places actually quite frightening, and in places also completely predictable to what you can expect.
This is Jonathan Pajot. Welcome to the Symbolic World.
So I'm going to try to do this with not too many spoilers, but there will probably be some kind of spoilers in what I'm going to say. My purpose is mostly to help you understand what this movie is about, what's going on. So the basic concept of the movie is pretty simple. A man who works for a private company called Wordex, which is kind of a stand-in for SpaceX. I guess there's a lot of not so coded anti-Republican messages in the video. People wearing red hats, a little different maybe with an American flag. The whole movie starts in a wrestling match. So there's this whole allusion to kayfabe and to kind of fake narratives. There's something about, like ICE police shooting in cars. Like there's all these allusions to kind of news media things. It's not the main thing about the story, but it's all there. And so when you see the name of the company Wordex, you think maybe this is an allusion to SpaceX. It's a private company that works with the government and has been the guardian of these secrets that, of course, the aliens exist. They're here. So a young man that works for them steals the information and now decides that he's going to disclose it and show it to the entire world. And so basically, the entire movie is him having this information and looking to disclose it. And it's a series of chases between the bad guys and the good guys. There's MacGuffins, basic MacGuffins. And, there's like two MacGuffins, actually. The basic MacGuffin is like a space alien technology thing that the man has that he kind of carries with him. And there's the second MacGuffin, which is the information of that the aliens are real. It's all these video files that he's going to show. And so right away in the very conceit of the movie, you have something very strange that happens, which reveals how much the movie is kind of like late boomer propaganda. And the movie is that the guy is looking for a way to disclose these images, and he ends up disclosing it. This is a slight, I guess, spoiler. He ends up disclosing it on the news, like on the evening news, the TV news. That's where he ends up disclosing it. And then it gets transmitted to all of the media channels, and they show the logos, like to CNN, to CBS, to Fox News. And this is how the entire world discovers about the aliens. And this is after 2.5 hours of film. And anyone who is under the age of 70 knows that this movie could have ended in 5 minutes just with a laptop and a Wi-Fi connection. And so it's very weird. The guy carries all this information the entire time and is like, is looking to disclose it when he just could have uploaded it, to 4chan or to YouTube or send it to WikiLeaks or whatever. There's all these ways in which he could have dealt with this information. And so already you have this weird propagandic aspect about the media, and there's also a very strange propagandic aspect about Hollywood. That's a little harder to describe. You might have to want to see the movie, why this is. There's the whole kind of studio concept where they're reproducing this, one of the character's childhood house in order to provoke the memory, and so there's this weird kind of meta cinema commentary in the movie. It's not that important, but it definitely is also trying to get us to understand the importance of Hollywood in the question of the alien narrative and how it fits in all of this. So, that's the basic concept. The guy has this information, wants to put it out. And of course, this is just downstream from the other Spielberg movies that have dealt with the alien visitation, that is Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and of course, E.T. the Extraterrestrial. The message in those early movies was religious through analogy, right? So you had all these religious images in those movies, the lights in the sky, the mountain, of course, in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the character of E.T. the Extraterrestrial dying and resurrecting, this image when you see him in the back of the van in E.T. wearing the white clothes as if he is, an image of the Messiah. And so I remember a few Christians back in the day were kind of raising eyebrows about, okay, so what are these movies suggesting, that in some ways the aliens are a kind of replacement for religion? And it was done through this more kind of symbolic or analogical mode. But now in this movie, it is done very directly. That is, the question of, religion and extraterrestrial is just hit on the head in ways that is painful, that is so painful. And it feels to me like the desperate cry of a director who is at the end of his life and really wants to make sure now that you get the message. You get the message that that the extraterrestrials, they are kind, they are benevolent, they come to teach us that empathy is the ruling principle of the entire universe. And so we really have to discover that from the strangers, from the aliens, right? But of course, in this story, the government has taken the aliens, kept them prisoner, tortured them in evil ways, prodded them, tortured them, and has stolen their technology, right? And that's how we have our technology now, is the fact that they had stolen the technologies from these aliens. And so now this brave young man is going to disclose. And it's kind of interesting because, this movie's coming out at the time when the U.S. government is just like releasing all these videos about UFOs. It feels like the U.S. government itself wants to reveal more of what it knows about it. But of course, in the movie, that's not the case. In the movie, it's the media, right? The media and the revolutionary that is going to disclose the information, and the government is bad because the government wants to keep the information. So, yeah, trying to control the story and the narrative in this case, clearly. And so in the story, you have the religious symbolism, and this is where it all starts to get very weird. One of the characters is the ex-nun who, of course, doubts her faith, kind of, or at least doubts her vocation as a nun. And there's a scene that is absolutely crazy because there is a man who uses the alien technology, and you can use the alien power and the alien technology to possess people. And so this man uses the alien technology to possess this woman, and the woman is possessed, and she rips her crucifix off, and then she acts against her will and is going to kill her friend, through this possession. And oddly enough, the only way that she can stop the power of this possession, the possessor uses the words of Jesus, to convince her. And the only way that she can stop it is to press her crucifix in her hand and make a hole, kind of like a stigmata. And she drops the crucifix on the floor, and there's blood on the ground, and ultimately she has to stick a knife in the stigmata to kind of shake herself out of that state. But obviously she's still in danger. The man then possesses her again later in the story. So it's a very odd symbolism. And this woman, she says, we shouldn't reveal the aliens because, it's going to question everything. And if we show the world real divine beings, what will they do? And then there's a kind nun, who tells her, God created all creatures, and if he created all these creatures in the rest of the world, that's completely fine. And, that's not a completely insane statement, but in the movie, the aliens are presented as the saviors. They are presented as the ones that come to teach us empathy and kindness and have all of these kind of techno magical powers. And what are those techno magical powers, you might ask? So This is where the movie gets very, very weird, especially weird in a kind of post-Epstein world. Now, through the movie, it's a bunch of chases, that's what the movie's about, and there's some pretty decent action scenes. The characters are interesting. The character played by Emily Blunt is really good. She's an amazing actress in the movie, and it's quite compelling, and so it's like, Steven Spielberg knows what he's doing. He's obviously a good director. The music is by John Williams, and so it's kind of nostalgic to hear that Star Wars kind of music in it, and so it's not completely unenjoyable, but it does feel a little tired. It doesn't feel shocking like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and it's not as emotionally driven, and kind of doesn't take you on that emotional roller coaster that E.T. takes you. So in the movie, we discovered that the two main characters, when they were children, they were taken by the aliens, and it's very strange. And so the aliens disguise themselves as woodland animals, right? Very much in a kind of Disney way. These like woodland animals with nice kind of faces and a kind of kindness. And they really do want to reference the Disney woodland animals, because the young girl who gets kidnapped by the aliens, when the aliens come into her room, she sings the song in Snow White, one day my prince will come. And we know, of course, what that is. There's obviously a marriage reference in that song, and there's also a kind of spiritual reference in that song, because we know that in the story of Snow White, the prince at the end is in some ways a stand-in for Christ. When Snow White is resurrected, she's taken up into heaven, if you remember the end of that movie. So I might be reading a lot into it, but it's very odd that she sings that particular song. So the woodland animals come to her, and then they trick her, for all intents and purposes, into following them out of her house. And then they take her to what, I swear to God, in the movie, they call Hansel and Gretel's house. And this is said several times in the movie, that they were taken to Hansel and Gretel's house. And obviously we know that Hansel and Gretel's house is the place where the children are eaten. And they don't deal with this weird symbolism. And so they're taken into Hansel and Gretel's house, which is the spaceship. And then they're put on tables, and the aliens do something to the children, a kind of procedure. And this procedure is so traumatic that the children suppress the memory and see it as traumatic, have this very strange suppressed memory that they don't want to go to, they don't want to remember because of how traumatic it is. They keep it suppressed until, as adults, the memory is now activated by the aliens. And when it's activated by the aliens, it reveals to us that the children were given powers. Especially the woman. She's the one who has the most powers. The man has the power of kind of pattern recognition and mathematics and language recognition. What powers does the woman have? Well, the woman has the power to pretend, to appear to everyone as their closest loved ones. So when she comes up to someone, she can appear to them as their closest loved ones. She's also capable of reading people's minds and using that to manipulate them, and using the fact that she can appear as their closest loved ones to manipulate them into doing what she needs them to do. She also has the capacity to make things that are in plain sight disappear in order to accomplish the purposes that she wants to accomplish. She also, of course, has the capacity to speak several languages and to encounter people in whatever languages she has. And then ultimately, she ends up having the power. And they say that they are passengers for something. And what they're passengers for is, of course, the revelation of the aliens. And the revelation of the aliens is, of course, we know, I mean, all these things that are happening, the fact that she's infiltrating people, the fact that she's pretending to be your loved one, that she is seeing your thoughts and using it to manipulate you. All of that is done for the good, obviously, of mankind, and to show how empathy is the truth and to reveal the message of the aliens to all of us. But it's very disturbing, folks, and it's almost hair-raising to think that in the post-Epstein world, they could show us a movie in which children are kidnapped by people pretending to be something else, by strangers, by aliens pretending to be something else, that they are initiated, in parenthesis, into something which is traumatic to them in a way that they suppress the memory until they're adults, and that ultimately this is to the service of these aliens. That is, so that now they can become the spokespeople and help the world see, that the aliens are the saviors. And of course, I am in some ways seeing this through the lens. The movie doesn't present it through that lens. The movie presents it as all good. This is all good. But that is everything that I've said is part of the movie. Everything that I've said is directly in the story. And so I wonder what exactly is going on here. What exactly is going on? What's strange about the movie as well is that it goes out of its way to use conspiracy theory type images. All of the type of symbolism that the most wild conspiracy theorists uses to recognize supposedly the movie from the secret societies, from the Illuminati, from the secret esoteric societies that are controlling society, that goes out of its way to use that symbolism. The one eye that keeps getting framed. They use it in all their advertisement, and it's several times in the movie they portray it. The butterfly. There's a woman, the basic extraterrestrial vessel woman, she wears this pendant of half the wing of a butterfly, and she's constantly being shown with her pendant, and they focus on her pendant. And of course, you have to remember that the Christian woman rips her pendant off, And so this weird, and they're both kind of similar gold pendants. She rips her pendant off, and doubts her faith and all of that. It's all very strange. And so why do I think this is the desperate boomer move? And so I think that this is, of course, the message is clear, folks. The alien, the stranger, is the good guy. Not only the good guy, the savior is better than us. And empathy is the only virtue. Openness, empathy is the only virtue. This is, of course, the World War II, post-World War II narrative. But in this version, the desperation at which they hammer at the propaganda is so strong that my sense, at least I hope, that in some ways people will be able to see through it and see it for what it is. And at the same time, this insane, advocacy for traditional media in a world where traditional media is becoming more and more irrelevant is quite a desperate move, a desperate gesture to kind of help us know where the trusted truth will come from. And, of course, the film ends with the final revelation of the aliens and a admonition. And this is how it ends. I won't go into the actual details of how it ends, but it ends with a kind of order to pay attention to them, right? It ends with an order that we should listen to the aliens. And that is really that's how the entire story kind of comes together. And so, I was sitting there in the cinema, I'll be honest with you, and it was difficult for me to not make sounds and to not to make grunts and sounds in the cinema going, what is this? What am I watching? What the hell is happening? And I was looking around, and sadly, I have to say that obviously no one had noticed. And weirdly enough, after the movie, I was standing there in the cinema, and a man came up to me for some reason. I guess wanted to engage in conversation, and said, "Did you just come out of seeing the movie?" And he said, "What did you think?" And so as I started to explain what I thought and what I'd seen in the movie, he just looked at me wide-eyed and hadn't thought about it. And he said, I think the aliens are real. And I think that, this is showing us something that's real, and that it's showing us that that our technology comes from the aliens, and that the aliens, and I asked him, I said, don't you find it odd that the aliens are the saviors, that the aliens are the good guys, and that we are evil? And he just kind of looked at me and he was like, well, yeah, probably if there's aliens, there's probably good and bad aliens. But like I said, so I guess the propaganda still works. And but I do hope that a lot of people, and that most people, will be able to wake up from the propaganda, because we need a more balanced story, and and we need to be ready to not accept that the aliens are your saviors, because the aliens are not. So hope this was useful. Hope this was helpful. If you like what I'm doing, don't forget, you can go to thesymbolicworld.com. You can sign up. You can get news from us, and you can also support us financially if that's something that you find interesting. And so thanks for your attention. I'll talk to you very soon. Bye-bye. For the colorful month of June, we are having a special promotion for our most recent fairy tale, Little Red Riding Hood, in which if you get the book, you will also get an audiobook version of it for free. You'll get me reading both the book and the symbolism essay, which in this case is part of the very book. The story of Little Red Riding Hood is so appropriate for now. It is relevant to our situation in so many ways, when we have, in some ways, are asking questions about infiltration, about, identity, about who gets to claim what identity, and what it means to have someone pretending to be you inside your world, and how that can be a dangerous thing to happen. And so, we told our own version, one that kind of takes it one step further, that I hope you will enjoy. So get your book today while this promotion is on.